Looking for a degree program that rewards you for what you already know? At WGU, all of our bachelor's and master's programs are competency-based, allowing you to progress at your own pace. Washingtonians know how valuable time and money are, and so do we. At WGU, your hard work and experience can help you finish your degree faster and for less. Join a community of driven professionals from across the DMV who are unlocking new career opportunities today. See how your knowledge can give you an edge at wgu.edu.
Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3 and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money. We're live on the air, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and you're on demand. Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all of your favorite podcast platforms. A rebound on Wall Street following Friday's sell-off on the war between Iran and Israel. We'll be getting an update directly from the Israeli Consul General here in Los Angeles later this hour. Stocks rebounded. Oil prices pulled back as concerns about the conflict between Israel and Iran impacted the financial markets. The Dow coming in for a closing gain today of 317 points, selling at 42,515. The S&P 500 closing up 56 points at 6,033, and the NASDAQ moved up nearly 300 points at 19,701. The yield in the 10-year note at 4.45%. This after Friday's tough session that saw the Dow plunge more than 700 points and a big sell-off on Friday ahead of the weekend. Stocks hitting session highs today after the Wall Street Journal reported Iran might be willing to restart talks over its nuclear program in an effort to de-escalate the conflict with Israel. We're following all these developments very closely. The price of oil right now up 79 cents at $72.56 a barrel. Brent crude in London just under $73 a barrel. The yield in the 10-year note now back to 4.45%. Crypto's holding up pretty well in all this. So right now, Bitcoin, though, down about 1,000 at 107,755. Ethereum pulling back about 100 at 2,571. And Doge at the moment at 17 cents. Of course, the tariff and trade issue still out there on the trade front. U.S. talks with the EU and Canada taking center stage now as the president attends the G7 summit in Canada with a July 9th deadline approaching. The president's deadline, the date at which his 90-day pause of steep Liberation Day hikes expire. That's something the markets are paying attention to once again. It's a big week this week with a big Fed meeting. It's widely expected the Fed chairman will hold the line on rates this week. When they wrap up a two-day policy-setting meeting on Wednesday, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will be making the announcement along with a statement on the economy and a decision on interest rates. Uranium stocks have suddenly hit a 52-week high. AI driving demand for nuclear power and other energy sources. We'll talk more about that in just a moment, keeping an eye on that sector here today. NVIDIA at or near an all-time high today as well, moving above $145 a share, pretty close to the record high we saw back in January of $149 and change. Oil stocks, of course, in focus, given what's happening in the Middle East. We're also watching what's happening, of course, in downtown Los Angeles. According to the LAPD, no protester was arrested overnight last night since the city of L.A. enacted the temporary nightly curfew in a portion of downtown Los Angeles. Looks like the mayor has just announced they're scaling back on the curfew tonight, announcing that the nightly curfew is in effect tonight, but will be going from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. instead of the previous 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. We'll talk about that coming up later this hour with the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD Sergeant, current reserve officer with more than 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. But first, on your money, the markets, the economy, and the whole works now. Joining us live, top-ranked money manager Ken WINANS, president and chief investment officer at WINANS Investments at winansinvestments.com. Ken WINANS, also a market historian, author of numerous books. His latest is Investment Atlas 3, Creating Wealth Using Historical Trends. He's also a Forbes magazine contributor, so be sure to check out his latest article titled The Great Whipsaw of 2025. Investors need to pivot into Trump-era stocks. Ken WINANS also has his crypto credentials, too. Most importantly, he's host of Winning with WINANS, heard every Monday night at 6 p.m. right here on your favorite station, 790 KBC. Good afternoon to you, sir. Ken WINANS.
Good afternoon, Frank. And as you said in my new Forbes article, I talked about the great whipsaw of 2025. Well, here we are, just about coming up on the mid-year point for this year, and the S&P 500 is up a whopping 2% on the year. The Dow's at a goose egg, and the NASDAQ 100, I think, is up a whopping 4%. So it is a very different year than it certainly was last year or even the year before. But with that being said, you know, in spite of all these headlines, I mean, I know you follow it as well as I do. I mean, you just look at, I mean, there was everything, every extreme imaginable was being played out this weekend, and surprisingly, the financial press. But in spite of all of that, the market is finding a way to be somewhat buoyant in this whole mess.
On there live with Money Manager Ken Winans, and the big news, of course, Israel launching attacks to wipe out Iran's nuclear program, and military action continues between both Israel and Iran. There was fear that the price of oil would spike well over $100 a barrel in this scenario. It actually pulled back today, back down to around 72 and change. Obviously, oil and the energy sector very much in focus here. Ken Winans, give us a reaction to the big news and the impact in the financial markets.
Well, it's even actually a little more complicated than just geopolitically, Frank. This time of year is also a highly volatile year for crude oil, just seasonal, from a seasonality standpoint. On average, 70% of the time, it is up at least 4% on the month. So you're having the demand issues, the refinery issues, the geopolitical issues. I think it's safe to say that crude oil is probably going to be volatile throughout a good part of this summer based on what you just said. And then, of course, you know, for the folks of California, there's very little reprieve in sight when you look at some of the governmental policies towards, you know, basically not giving any incentive to have a refinery in California that requires these extra clean blends. So you have that going on. But, you know, Frank, commodities in general, when you have something like this happen, I mean, you have the agricultural commodities, you have what we call the softs, things like cotton. They all get affected by these things. And I know that we're very worried about inflation in this country, but I think you have to just keep a close eye on the raw materials that do come out of all parts of the world. And actually, of all the things that was discussed this weekend, when you talk about shutting down shipping, and the Strait of Hormuz is a very, very important point for our allies in that region and for us, not just for crude oil, but for just general commerce. So you have that, and of course you have what's going on in the Red Sea with the Houthis. You get a lot of things that could cause logistical problems to return to our shipping lanes.
Certainly, the Strait of Hormuz maybe not as important as it used to be during the Carter years when the Ayatollah took over Iran back in 1979, and of course we saw that spike back then in an energy crisis. It looks like the U.S. has a lot more oil production these days, so that might be offsetting things as well. Ken Winans, would you be doing anything, making any moves in the oil patch or energy patch at this point?
I actually have been, and one stock, I think we mentioned it on the last show. I like names of companies that people have never heard of before, and you know, it's you know, I know people's immediate reaction is to go jump into the big U.S. oil stocks, but I'll tell you what, go take a look at Antero Midstream. It's an energy play symbol AM, and you know, it's a medium-sized company, but it's actually, in spite of what's gone on with energy, it's actually up 20% on the year. It's held up really well. The other one that I like is Williams Company, which is more of a transportation play in natural gas and oil. I'm looking at those special names, Frank, that, again, just don't roll off people's tongues, but they typically outperform some of the big guys. I would certainly, I think you have to look at energy. You know, we talked about looking at Trump-era stocks in my Forbes article. You're foolish to not pay attention to energy stocks and mining stocks and industrial stocks in this whole play as we move, especially after we get done with the tax bill. Everything's going to be focusing on deregulation and certainly the reindustrialization of this country. And I think you're going to find that the leadership in the S&P 500 is going to shift more so than it even has now.
On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans. And Ken, let's turn to analog gold as well as so-called digital gold. And that is gold and crypto now. Gold got a pop last week and is still hovering above $3,400 an ounce and near its all-time high, which is just above $3,500. Bitcoin up around 107.7 here at the moment at last check, close to its all-time high, which was close to 112. But what about these moves in the face of what's been happening?
Well, in the case, I mean, and actually it's kind of funny, Frank, of all the questions I get asked, it's really about gold and silver right now, because a lot of people don't want to be the last person buying at its all-time high. I can tell you that there's more buyers than sellers when it comes to gold and silver, and a lot of them are not just individuals. They are central banks around the world that are stockpiling gold at the tune of about $8.5 billion a month. So I think that the demand is alive and well for gold, and I think it's going to logically spill over to silver. Now, in the case of crypto, it's actually interesting. Of all the stocks that I tracked today, the best performing stock by far today was Coinbase. Coinbase has blown off all the issues that came from that hacking escapade last month, which caused tremendous volatility. The stock has made up all of its losses. It's moving higher. And for a lot of people that I've been commenting, there's a lot of people out there who don't want to try to figure out what they do with crypto, but there's an awful lot of crypto-related stocks that trade on the New York Stock Exchange and the NASDAQ. I mean, the IPO flow of those kind of companies is going to be very strong and going to move forward, especially with the deregulation coming later this year and into 2026. So I think that investors need to, even if you don't like crypto, don't understand crypto, but you do understand stocks, I'd at least encourage you to track crypto industry related securities, because I think they're going to continue to run well. They're volatile, but you certainly should be tracking them.
All right. What about the ETFs that came up last year, Bitcoin as well as Ethereum, and I guess they're talking about Solana this year as well, and and ETFs like BITO, which appears to throw off a pretty big dividend, by the way. What do you think of the ETF offerings?
I'm glad to see that the bigger ETF players are issuing those. But Frank, it's funny. There's a lot of discussion right now about those crypto ETFs, as it was about the gold ETF when it was first came out, probably 25, 30 years ago. And it was, is there enough inventory for these ETFs to actually hold it? And I mean, many.
Looking for a degree program that rewards you for what you already know? At WGU, all of our bachelor's and master's programs are competency-based, allowing you to progress at your own pace. Washingtonians know how valuable time and money are, and so do we. At WGU, your hard work and experience can help you finish your degree faster and for less. Join a community of driven professionals from across the DMV who are unlocking new career opportunities today. See how your knowledge can give you an edge at wgu.edu.
Expert entrepreneur Ed Milet is on a mission to max out your life.
We're throwing open the metaphorical closet doors of our lives. We're going to be cleaning out the closet. What no longer fits? Audit some of your relationships. How about auditing your emotions? Maybe it's your career you need to look at. Get your life together for this season.
The Ed Milet Show.
It's time for a little cleaning of the soul. Let's get a little ruthless, a little refreshing, and a little real. God bless you, everyone.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Times people have said there can't possibly be enough gold to back the GLD ETF. The company has come out many times and has proven that they do have it. I think you're going to have the same arguments about crypto. I mean, is there enough Bitcoin that is available for these companies to swallow it up, or Ethereum, or Solana? And I think you're going to have more and more of those discussions. The only thing I keep worrying about in the case of new ETFs in general is tracking error. Do these things track Bitcoin and the other cryptos one-to-one? And I've heard some complaints about that. The other thing has been fees. Some of these things came out, the fees were awfully high, and if you take that, then you on top of it have hired an advisor to work for you to figure out crypto. It's getting pretty expensive. So I think all in all, we have to let this work through the system. But as I repeated earlier, Frank, whether or not you like it, it's here to stay. And it's going to be part of your life in the financial world, whether it's you deal with a bank, you deal with an investment firm, or you deal with an investment manager. It's going to come up in the discussion more and more as the years go on.
On there live with top-ranked money manager Ken Winans, and it looks like AI is going nuclear, and we see uranium-related stocks hitting recent highs. AI driving this nuclear power demand here, and PS NVIDIA, the giant in the AI world, near its all-time high. What about these uranium stocks and And good old NVIDIA here also making a move on the upside today.
It's funny. I'm going to go back to crypto for one moment. You've got these crypto miners that use tremendous amounts of energy to mine these coins. I think you have to put AI and crypto as very strange bedfellows in the same issue about tremendous power needs. And I think, again, yes, nuclear is a reliable way, and I bring it up to people. I mean, and Frank, I know that you and I are old enough to remember some of the scary things that happened with certainly Chernobyl in the old Soviet Union, or certainly 3 Mile Island. But what I've told people that have asked me about this is, look, all you have to do is look no further than the United States Navy. It has had nuclear reactors on naval ships that are not very big, by the way. They're relatively small if you think about, a frigate or any of these smaller surface vessels. The point being, we have the technology now to do this properly. And as they talk about the new tax law, and they're talking about incentives and disincentives, especially on alternative sources of energy, I think you have to look toward what's going to be going on with nuclear reactors, which therefore spills over into uranium and other rare earths needed to power this new world. So yes, Frank, you're 100% right. People are paying attention to this more and more, and that goes right into the commodity space and the metals complex what we've been talking about.
All right, before I forget about metals, we see silver at just above $36 an ounce. Platinum has made a pretty impressive move lately, above $1,200 all of a sudden, and palladium is above 1,000 at 1,038. Anything else in the metals complex that's getting your attention?
I always tell people is they're cousins. I mean, they're not in lockstep. You can't ever buy one thinking that one's going to move more than the other. But here's something to keep in mind about, you talked about palladium. People had pretty well written off catalytic converters as dead when we were talking about EV mandates and there were going to be no more combustion engines. Well, as you all know, that's all gone. And so now you're looking at good old-fashioned supply and demand, and palladium is needed in those catalytic converters to keep cars, running, relatively efficiently from an environmental standard. So you have that. And then you mentioned platinum and copper. I mean, again, these are some of the reasons why I am not so negative about what's going on when you look at the world at large. Those are largely industrial metals, and they're moving on demand situation. And also, do not forget that the new AI chips require a tremendous amount of gold and silver in those chips. So that by itself could drive things quite a bit going forward. But I think, and I continue to run into people who they're staunch stock investors. They don't like ETFs. They don't want to touch a gold or a silver ETF. And I've told them repeatedly, you're making a huge mistake. These rallies still have real depth to them. They're going to move higher. They're not going to go straight up, as you and I know, but the rallies are still strong. And I think, again, it's not too late to go to the party to add these type of things to your portfolio.
All right, NVIDIA, the star of the Mag 7. NVIDIA is called the Magnificent One and is hovering near its all-time high, about $5 off its all-time high. Microsoft, meanwhile, also quietly moving higher and remains the most valuable company based on market cap, up more than $4 today at $479 and change. Microsoft has been impressing folks with its move. What about the rest of the Mag 7 names here, and what about Microsoft, Apple, and right down the line?
Well, here's the thing to keep in mind. I think you're going to have to, everybody get used to saying tech as a group. You've really got to dissect, and if you are an ETF industry type person, you're going to need to become a stock picker. Go read my article that I just wrote in Forbes, and it does spell out that when you're in these kind of whipsaw type markets, this is the land of the stock picker, and you've got to be able to say, look, a stock like Google is still down 7 on the year. A stock like Microsoft is up 13. And when you talked about NVIDIA up 7, I'm going to turn right around and point to Broadcom, symbol AVGO, which is, to me, a play within that area. It's up 8. You've got to be able to dissect those names. And, as far as the tech stocks they are the big guys on my list that continue to reign supreme. You have Meta up 19 on the year. You have Netflix up 37, and you have Spotify up 60. So again, you just can't take tech and throw it all into one big soup any longer. You really got to break out the ingredients to make it work for you in this market.
Yeah, Broadcom replaced Tesla, right, among the Mag 7 names. Tesla moving higher today. And what about Tesla here now?
Well, the thing about Tesla, and it's going to be interesting as people look at how are we going to be dealing with this reindustrialization of America, and of course that includes automotives. And I repeatedly tell people, look, whether you like EV or not like EV, the simple fact of the matter is Tesla is an American automotive company. It's proven to have a powerful niche. I am of the opinion that Tesla is ran by some very bright people, including Elon Musk, and I think they'll deal with some of the issues that they've had lately. They're going into a new phase. I personally think that we're going to start seeing some pretty amazing design changes coming from even their basic models, and they will be able to compete head-to-head without all the government subsidies, which has always been the big concern that people have had about Tesla. But, Frank, it's the same thing. It's a celebrity stock with a celebrity CEO, and as I always tell people, be careful about these kind of companies because they can go up and down for the wrong reasons, and actually it becomes the domain of traders and not investors. So you want to be a little careful, though. But I think anything that's in the industrial space, you've got to realize is going to be favored over the next 3.5 years.
And the other sector I wanted to ask you about before I let you off the hook here, Ken, is the defense sector. We saw that pop in names like Northrop Grumman on Friday and General Dynamics. Looks like they both pulled back here today. What about the defense names here now?
They're another group that long before we had the situation go on with what's going on with Iran and Israel and certainly with what was going on with Gaza. But I think you've got to take a good hard look. And, there's a name that came up on my screen not long ago. It's called Kratos Defense. And Frank, I'd actually even heard of this thing. Symbol is KTOS. They have a niche in the defense industry. And what I've heard is they're actually going to get new defense contracts because there's still the talk about DOGE-related cuts at the Pentagon. And I do think those are coming. But I tell you what, I would just keep an eye on the less big companies that are more suppliers, like GE Aerospace. Stock's up 42% on the year, symbol GE. I think you want to look at those kind of plays, or a play like HEICO, HEI. It's up 56% on the year. But no, to not have defense in this portfolio, again, you are not following the trend of the Trump-era stocks, which is defense and industry and deregulation of finance. Again, you have to pivot and go with the flow, and the flow is in that direction.
Terrific, Ken. Look forward to speaking with you at 6 o'clock this evening on Winning with WINANS here on 790 KABC. Be sure to check out Ken Winans' latest article in Forbes titled The Great Whipsaw of 2025. Investors Need to Pivot into Trump-Era Stocks. Ken Winans, also, of course, President and Chief Investment Officer at Winans Investments at winansinvestments.com, author of numerous books, including his latest, Investment Atlas 3. Ken, look forward to speaking to you this evening here on Winning with Winans at 6 o'clock on 790 KABC. Thank you very much for coming to the line this afternoon.
My pleasure, Frank. Take care.
Thank you very much. And out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC.
There's a kind of hush.
790 KABC welcomes Herman's Hermit, starring Peter Noon, with special guests the Grassroots and the Buckinghams, coming to the Pacific Amphitheater at the OC Fair July 23rd as part of the Toyota Summer Concert Series. Tickets are on sale now at pacamp.com. Right now, caller 9 wins at 1-888-795-2222. You can get a pair of tickets to the show if you're caller number 9. And all concert tickets include admission to the OC Fair. Tickets furnished by the Pacific Amphitheater. Call now, 1-888-795-2222. Caller 9 wins. Stocks moving higher today to kick off the new week. The Dow up 317, the S&P 500 of 56, and the NASDAQ up nearly 300. The yield of the 10-year note, 4.45%. Gold hovering at 3,415. Silver at 36.38. Bitcoin at 107,755. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues 790 KABC. Turning now to the Middle East, Israel has launched an attack to wipe out Iran's nuclear program. Its military leaders and nuclear scientists. Israel came under attack by Iranian missiles in recent days. The IDF launched the comprehensive military strike on Iran following months of unsuccessful negotiations over Iran's nuclear program and after the Hamas terror attack on Israel on October 7, 2023, which had Iranian support. Israel's operation against Iran could take 2 to 3 weeks, but the time frame depends on decisions made by the political echelon on the scope of the campaign, according to the Times of Israel. Joining us live now is the Honorable Israel BACHAR, the Consul General of Israel in Los Angeles. Consul General, thank you very much
Yep.
for taking the call this afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much. First of all, give us an update on what's happening in Israel as the Iranian missile strikes there continue. Give us an update on what's happening.
Well, Iran tried to launch a barrage of missiles just an hour ago, but instead of sending 100 missiles like they did before, now they succeeded to send 10 missiles to Israel. That's because we are hunting and trying to eliminate as much as we can the launchers and the ballistic missile storage, and we're doing great, and we continue to put a pressure on the Iranian army as much as we can to prevent the escalation and to prevent them damaging and harming and continue to murder Israeli civilians in our cities.
On there live with the Honorable Israel Bahar, the Consul General of Israel. Israel striking military targets in Iran. Meanwhile, Iranian missiles hitting civilian areas of Israel, right, including Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Any other specific updates you have to share with us now?
Well, Israel already also started the second phase of the campaign, which is going after the different outposts of the regime of Iran, meaning centers of the IRCG, a different position like the TV, the Iranian TV, which is a big symbol of the regime to the Iranian people. We took it down today to make sure that people understand that this radical regime that threatens Israel, threatens America, and threatens the Middle East is not a legit regime. This regime needs to put into accountability and making sure that they're stopping the aggression in the Middle East.
That's a very important point. And Consul General, what are you telling Israelis here in Los Angeles? What is the travel situation at the moment?
Unfortunately, still the airport in Israel is closed. We cannot allow any airplanes to land in Israel. I believe it's going to be solved in the next week. Meantime, people need to be patient and wait until the skies are going to get clear. We know that people want to come back home. People have families in Israel. People want to see their kids and unite with their families. We tell people, please be patient. We're going to get... We're going to overcome this obstacle very, very soon. Little bit of patience. We're going to get you home in safe and in a speedy way.
On there live with the Israeli Consul General here in Los Angeles. And, of course, Los Angeles has a very large Jewish community here. Are you feeling the support and love from the Jewish community here in Los Angeles?
Yes, 100%. I think a lot of people are worried. Some people of the community have kids that are serving in the IDF. Or they have families in Israel. So a lot of them are trying to do the most that they can in sending support, money, making phone calls, even praying for the people in Israel, making sure that people are safe. And we really feel that they are true brothers and sisters of ours here in America, and they're great American patriots, and also they're great Zionists at the same time.
And certainly a big difference between the previous administration and the current administration as far as open support for Israel. Any comments about how things have changed in recent months?
Well, first of all, we're working in close coordination with the United States before and during the operation, and the current administration and the United States now is providing us different support, and we're deeply appreciated. Also, we deeply appreciate the previous administration, which is the beginning of the war after October 7th. The step up, they give us ammunition. Later on, we had more conflict, that's true, and more disagreement about how to conduct the war in Gaza. But now we're looking forward, and we are very much thankful to this current administration, to the American people for supporting Israel and for understanding that Iran is an aggressor that chants death to America, death to Israel, and we, the Western democracy, must stop Iran from having a nuclear weapon. And I was so happy to hear today, and also yesterday, the American president said loud and clear, Iran is not going to have a nuclear weapon. And the G7 that you mentioned at the beginning of your show, the G7 unanimously say today, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's a big change, and it's a statement, clear statement, and we are very, very satisfied about it.
On the live with the Consul General of Israel here in Los Angeles. And we have to be also reminded, I think, The Hamas terror attack on Israel on October 7, 2023 had the support of Iran, and the very next day, the Wall Street Journal laid out Iran's involvement there. So maybe you can tell us more about that.
Sure. We found intelligence last month that Iran...
Looking for a degree program that rewards you for what you already know? At WGU, all of our bachelor's and master's programs are competency-based, allowing you to progress at your own pace. Washingtonians know how valuable time and money are, and so do we. At WGU, your hard work and experience can help you finish your degree faster and for less. Join a community of driven professionals from across the DMV who are unlocking new career opportunities today. See how your knowledge can give you an edge at wgu.edu.
The United States Soccer Federation presents the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
Inside the opening 45 seconds. What a goal!
Jack McGlynn with that cannon of a left foot.
Never miss a game.
What a start for the United States.
Shot for distance. What a goal!
Never miss a moment.
Exquisite from the San Diegan.
Can he finish? Yes, he can! Yeah!
The U.S. Soccer Podcast. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Financed with $500 million this October 7th preparation. They gave not only the ideology to the Hamas, to this radical organization, terror organization, but also they pledged this kind of money. Actually, they transferred $200 million to finance October 7th. They didn't fully give the $500 million that they promised, but evidently they were highly involved in organizing, financing, and arming this horrible massacre that we experienced on October 7th.
Consul General, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We'll keep an open line to you on any important updates, and we so appreciate your joining us live at this critical moment. The Honorable Israel BACHAR, the Consul General of Israel here in Los Angeles. Consul General, thank you very much. We wish you and everyone in Israel all the very best, sir. Thank you very much for taking the call this afternoon.
Thank you.
All the best to you, and out to the freeways we go now on 790 KABC. Frank Mottek here for United Gold Group. Did you know that for more than 10,000 years, gold has been the greatest store of value and considered a safe haven asset to preserve your wealth? Well, now the U.S. debt at more than $36 trillion and climbing, a possible recession on the horizon, and the development to the digital dollar, central bank digital currency, it's more critical now than ever before to safeguard your assets like your cash savings and retirement accounts with physical gold. Opening a gold IRA is one of the best ways to secure your wealth and create a stable financial future. Stop worrying about your retirement in the markets and cash savings in the bank. Feel confident, prepared, and in control with physical gold and, yes, silver. Give my friends at United Gold Group a call right now. The number is 800-753-8534. Mention Mottek and you can get $1,000 worth of silver with a qualifying purchase. Call now, 800-753-8534. Or visit UnitedGoldGroup.com. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Another nervous night expected in downtown Los Angeles. Mayor Karen Bass just announced they've reduced the hours that a nightly curfew will take place in downtown L.A. in effect tonight, allowing struggling businesses to remain open later into this evening. The curfew, which had been in place since last Tuesday at 8 p.m., will now begin at 10 p.m., according to the mayor, in an announcement just a short time ago, and the curfew will continue to lift at 6 a.m. for the time being. Meanwhile, dozens of people were arrested during the protest over the weekend and really over the past week following immigration law enforcement raids at various work sites in downtown Los Angeles and throughout the city. Let's get an update now on what's happening from the Honorable Dennis ZINE, former L.A. City Council member and former LAPD sergeant, current reserve officer with more than 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis ZINE is on the line. Dennis ZINE, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Frank, good to be with you this afternoon. Over 500 arrests so far, starting June 7th, and a considerable number of people will be going to court, hiring attorneys, paying that cost. We know we have a very aggressive district attorney who will be prosecuting these cases. So those who have violated the law and subsequent to arrest, prosecution, it will be a trying experience for them. The mayor has reduced the curfew, and I think it's appropriate that be done. We know that things are calming down, and with the excessive heat we now have, I don't think a lot of people are going to want to go out there and protest. They've made their point. The LAPD is tired. The officers have been working these 12-hour shifts, It's an agonizing situation. They're wearing those uniforms, the bulletproof vests, the helmets, the gas masks, etc. It's a very trying venture for the officers that are assigned to this task force. And we did mobilize the police department, which means that everybody was in uniform working 12-hour shifts. So hopefully we can scale back to some normalcy. We can get back to doing the business we need to do to protect and serve everyone in Los Angeles and not chase around the hoodlums that want to create problems and chaos in Los Angeles.
What's your reaction to some of the nonsense we've seen out there, people taunting the mounted officers, the officers on horseback, hitting the horses and so forth, and the ridiculous situations we've seen out there?
Well, people have a right to lawfully protest, and we don't dispute that. But the problem is there are those that want to charge at the officers, want to charge at the horses. And what we want to do is a professional job, and all they need to do is they voice their concern. We understand their concern. And I emphasize to people that Los Angeles Police Department, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, state of California, we do not enforce immigration laws. There's a state law that prevents that from taking place. So they've got a concern about that. Take it with the federal government and don't pick on your local police officers and the local jurisdictions and cause this chaos and major disruption to businesses, in particular the downtown corridor. We've seen the chaos that's taken place, the damage to the property, the looting, et cetera. And in the evening hours, a lot of that activity is totally unlawful. And that's the problem, is these businesses are being affected day in and day out. They can't run to pay their bills. They don't have the staff that's coming to work because they're afraid to. We've gotten to the point it needs to come back to a semblance of order, and hopefully it will come back to that. And our officers get back to the routine of protecting and serving the people of Los Angeles. Many people have put calls in for police service, and there's no units to respond. So that's a situation we need to get back to normalcy. And we can only do that if we can pull those units back and get them assigned to their divisions of assignment.
All right. Certainly one thing that has changed, we're not seeing the revolving door situation where that we've seen in recent years under the current district attorney, Nathan Hochman, right? Maybe you can tell us about the difference here. At last check, I think 575 people, according to the last report I've seen, have been arrested during the protests since June 7th, 14 taken into custody for looting. What kind of charges are they facing, and will they in fact be charged? And tell us about the environment under the current DA now.
Well, clearly, this district attorney is very efficient, very effective, and I worked with him during his campaign. He's the kind of a prosecutor that we want. Those people who've committed these crimes, there's evidence to prove that. He will go for maximum prosecution. We also have a U.S. attorney who used to be in our state legislature. He's now on the U.S. aspect to do something very positive. So what we have is people in those offices who will prosecute these people to the full extent of the law, and that's what we need done. So the honorable citizens will have something protecting them, and those that go out and loot and create chaos in the community and throw Molotov cocktails and destroy businesses and attack police officers, highway patrol, deputy sheriffs, and the horses, et cetera, there'll be consequences for them, serious consequences, unlike it's been in the past with the former prosecutor. This is a prosecutor who believes in prosecution. He does it in a lawful manner, and those people who cross that line will suffer the consequences, and it will be incarceration, will be heavy fines, and I have no doubt that he will be very effective in teaching them a lesson. You're not going to do this in the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles. It's not going to happen.
All right, we have the National Guard deployed, federalized here. Of course, National Guard were deployed after the fires earlier this year. What is their role at this point, and also the Marines in the mix here? Maybe you can tell us more about that and how this is all evolving.
Well, it's a very awkward situation, and I've been involved in activities where we've had the National Guard during previous disturbances in the city of Los Angeles where we needed them, and the governor called them up. What we've seen happen in this situation with the president asserting his authority, the National Guard, the Marines, highly unusual. We'll see what happens. I know it's going to a higher court. We'll see how they rule. But those folks, and you look at the fatigues that they're working in this excessive heat, it's a cumbersome task for them. I was in West LA yesterday, and they were guarding the federal building. It's a challenging task, but hopefully we'll get back to some normalcy. It's appropriate for the governor to assert himself and to activate. First, we go to mutual aid, the Sheriff's Department, allied agencies. We've got officers from other departments in Southern California that have joined what we have within the Los Angeles County, and they're assisting. So we didn't really need the National Guard. We definitely don't need the Marines, the Army. We don't need that. It hasn't escalated. In the past, we have. When we've had some serious riots, we've needed them. This was a situation we didn't need that. We had sufficient resources, but nevertheless, we'll find out what the Court of Appeals wants to do on that situation, whether it was appropriate or not to deploy them. I think that the law enforcement had sufficient resources once they got geared up and went on mobilization. Again, mobilization means everyone, detectives, et cetera, working uniform assignments throughout the city of Los Angeles. So whatever assignments they were assigned to, that's pushed aside, and they're assigned to what we currently have, a massive deployment of personnel to make sure it's safe. And that.
The Honorable Dennis Zine, former L.A. City Council member, former LAPD sergeant, current reserve officer with more than 50 years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for coming to the line live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Bravo TV star Lala Kent holds nothing back.
I think the boundaries are getting a little unboundaried, but that's fine.
From relationships,
it's grabbing coffee with your friends. That is
right up my alley.
Right?
To business and beyond.
Where there's history, true friendships, but it's fine. I've also been a rat. I'm obsessed with her. I hate her. Literally the exact same feeling.
If you really want to party,
you have to have the perfect combination.
Give them Lala. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.